Hey YouTube, we are on day 163 in this trial. I cannot stop streaming it. I mean, I guess I could, but it's so much information, and I don't know. It's it's just easier for me to already have it when I go and do more content. And it's just so much to learn from. So I am still here streaming it. Matt Schardt is up on defense. And I want to see how he closes this thing out. Yesterday, I felt like he made this lady look like a, incompetent, really. But he's still got to do better than that. So, without further ado, we are going to get into what is probably the final witness of the state. Let's go. Hey, thank you for joining.
Some issues or not issues. I want to talk about the wiretaps and what we talked about Friday and yesterday. You had a wiretap. I understand you had one on Mr. Sumlin's phone. I'm not going to be talking about Mr. Sumlin's phone. I'm talking about Deamonte Garlington. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Do you have the number for the total number of calls recorded or listened to during that wiretap?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Was it in the thousands? Is that fair?
Probably in the thousands, yes.
Okay. Do you know how many total calls Mr. Stillwell was a party to?
I couldn't give you a number, but it would probably be not as many as others because he went into custody, I think, within 6 days of the wire going up.
Fair enough. And just so we're clear, when you apply for a wiretap, you send something to the phone company, correct?
Correct.
And the phone company is told not to inform anyone about the wiretap, certainly not to inform the subscriber.
Correct.
So no one, to your knowledge, no one told Mr. Garlington that he's being recorded.
Correct.
Okay, because that would defeat the purpose of the wiretap.
Correct.
Right? And to your knowledge, no one told anyone else that there was a wiretap on Mr. Garlington's phone.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the state referred to the calls that were played for the jury yesterday as a sampling. What was played to the jury wasn't exactly a random sampling of the calls, was it?
No, all of the calls were turned over, and it's my understanding that they had to be narrowed down.
Right. The state, in preparation of your testimony, they gave you a CD or some sort of flash drive with a number of calls that they chose and asked you to review them, correct? So you could speak intelligently about them.
Yes.
Okay. So it wasn't random sampling, it was calls that the state chose to focus on.
It's my understanding that the prosecution and the defense decided on what could and would be played. So it wasn't just random, let me pick 20 calls out of a bag. It was calls that were relevant to the case.
Right. Yeah, right. I'm just saying it just wasn't some random sample.
Correct.
It was focused.
Correct.
Okay. And so let's talk about some of the calls. We're going to talk about specific calls in a minute, but if you go back to what was played yesterday on that wiretap of Mr. Garlington's phone, there were repeated calls about keeping Miles Farley, who's a small man, right? He is a small gentleman, physically small.
Small, yes.
Okay. Talk about keeping Miles Farley from being violated or attacked at the Rice Street Jail, right? We heard several calls about Miles Farley and keeping him safe.
Correct.
Okay. We heard call, and do you have the call logs in front of you or anything?
I do not.
Okay. When you were testifying yesterday, what were you using to keep track of what calls which?
I didn't have anything in front of me.
Okay. Well, we heard call 2532 from April 3rd, 2534 from April 3rd, 2628 from April 4th, 3501 from April 13th, and 3697 from April 14th, all about Miles Farley and being in jail. Do you remember those 5 calls?
I do.
Okay. Was Shannon Stillwell a party to any of those calls?
He was not.
Okay. We also heard a call 3683 from April 14th about, and you could probably tell me who the people were. It was Deamonte Garlington and someone about flying a drone into the jail, it seemed.
Correct.
Okay. Was Shannon Stillwell a party to that call?
He was not.
Okay. Then we also heard about Deamonte Garlington going on and on about running into someone named Blizzy at some hotel in Cobb County.
Correct.
Okay. To your understanding, was Shannon Stillwell present for any of those events in Cobb County?
No, I believe he was in custody.
He
at
was
the
in
time.
custody. So he wasn't involved with any of those things that Deamonte was talking about, running into Blizzy in Cobb County.
Correct.
And then we also heard a call between, I believe, Deamonte Garlington and Antonio Sumlin, and it sounded, and this was call 3171 and 3172 from April 9th, about seeing someone wearing some jewelry, and they were asking if you have a slider car with paper tags. It sounded like they were trying to come up with a way to commit a crime, a robbery, right?
Correct.
Okay. Was Shannon a party to that call?
No.
Okay. And Shannon was in jail at that time, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so he was not involved in that situation at all either, correct? All right, cool. All right. I'm going to talk to you about specific calls that have already been played. March 14th, 2022 at 9:59 p.m. It's call 335, okay? It's a call where you testified, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was a call between Deamonte Garlington and a gentleman named DeMarco Boyer.
That is correct.
Okay, and that's at 9:59 p.m.
Correct.
Do you know how many 9:59 and how many seconds? Are you aware of that?
I would have to look at the log for the seconds.
Okay. And in that call, Garlington instructs Boyer to switch to video.
Correct.
Okay. Now, based on your investigation, you said Boyer was at the gas station.
Correct.
And you also said, well, you were about to say, and then I cut you off. Boyer, your investigation has concluded that Boyer was in Mr. Nichols' car.
Correct.
Okay, so, and you're basing that on your investigation. You're also basing on the fact that Miles Farley in that video, when he goes back to the car, gets into the back seat at the BP.
That and there are calls from the wire that
Okay.
say that he's in the car. Yes.
Fair. So this call at 9:59 between Garlington and Boyer, your investigation is Garlington, this is your investigation, is Garlington is in Mr. Stillwell's rented white Audi,
Correct.
and Mr. Boyer, who's not charged in
Correct.
this case, is a passenger in Mr. Nichols' Ford Fusion.
Correct.
Okay, white Ford Fusion.
Correct.
Okay. Your investigation based on the time on the surveillance video from the FedEx surveillance is that the shooting happened around 10:01 p.m., correct?
I don't know if it's based on the time on the FedEx video.
Okay, well, what's your understanding of when the shooting occurred? If you know.
I don't know how they arrived at 10:02, but I know that's when both cars pull off shortly thereafter. Within probably a minute or two, the cars pull off from the gas station.
Okay. Now, what I want to know is, it's a matter of timing. The 9:59 and however many seconds that this call is made where eventually Garlington tells Boyer to go to video. That 9:59 and however many seconds is based on the clock used during your wiretap. That's where we get that time,
Correct.
right? Okay, so that's based on the wiretap time. Okay. So, and then of course, after they hang up, then do you know if there was a subsequent video or FaceTime call?
I believe you could see the data transmission come through
Okay, and do you know how long that call was or when exactly when it took place?
immediately after, but I would have to look at the log.
Okay. And my question is, we have three different sets of time here. We have the wiretap time,
Correct?
we have the FedEx video time,
Correct?
and we have a BP video time.
Correct?
Okay. Are any of those, to your knowledge, are any of those three separate surveillance systems synced up?
They're not. So typically what you would have to do is go back and sync them because I know the wiretap is a constant. I know that's an accurate time.
Okay, so you know, and that's fine. So you know the wiretap is an accurate time, but we don't know if the FedEx is an accurate time or the BP is an accurate time.
I'd have to look at the timestamps on both.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is we can't just go by the BP time and go to 9:59 and however many seconds and say, oh, that's when that call was placed.
I went off of the wiretap data.
Right, exactly.
Correct.
Right, and that's what you were in charge of the wiretap. You went, but I'm going to go back to my question, and that makes complete sense to me that you went off the wiretap time. But we cannot go back to the BP and look at the BP at 9:59 and however many seconds and say that's when this call was made, because those two timing systems between the wiretap and the surveillance might not be synced up.
Correct. I'm not sure if they were or they weren't, but typically that's something I double check.
Okay, and the same thing for the FedEx. We can't look at the FedEx time and just go to 9:59 and however many seconds and say, oh, this is the exact time when that call was between Mr. Garlington and Mr. Boyer, between those two cars was made. We can't do that, can we?
Correct. I go with what I know to be constant.
Gotcha. So all you're saying is 9:59 on the wiretap time.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay. Mr. Atkins or Miss Knight, and I should ask you, could you please publish what you played yesterday at call 350? I'm going to ask some questions first. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm going to give you a couple minutes. All right, I'm going to talk really slow because I got to give Mr. Atkins a couple minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So we listened to another call at 2:01 a.m. between, do you know who that call was between?
I'd have to hear it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna cut to the chase. You said in court that you heard someone say, riding by the scene.
I don't know if I said that verbatim, but they're riding back through, I think is the direct quote.
And you said, but you said the scene.
They may have been riding back through the scene.
Okay, well, do you now know what call I'm talking about?
I know which call you're referring to, yes.
All right, and if you, and do you know who the speakers were?
Well, if it's from the wiretap, one would have been in Garlington.
Right.
And then I believe the other one may have been Boyer. I have to hear the call. I don't want to misspeak on it.
Okay, and people were fussing with each other. Someone was fussing with someone about not having a ride to get back to where they needed to go is essentially the gist of the call, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, if you could play, if you could publish. Right, and whatever, yes, if you could just publish, and I'm going to stop after about 40 seconds.
Bro, who that was?
Nah, the nigga Ray got it, not Dan still got it.
Okay, could you pause it?
Oh, for real?
All right, now, Miss Investigator Riverito, do you know who the speakers are?
I believe it's Boyer, but I need to hear a little bit more. That was kind of muffled.
That's fair. All right, Miss Hilton, if you could.
Yeah, RP, the YP Ray.
Yeah, I don't even know him.
That who got his change? That who changed little J5 to Jason?
Oh, for real?
Yeah, the YP Ray nigga.
Oh, I ain't even know that.
Yeah, that little PLK nigga.
Oh, yeah, I had a J5 with me last night. That's probably what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that who changed it.
Oh, damn, what I say, yeah. Buddy came and followed me. I followed his ass back.
Hey, talking about what the fuck wrong with him?
What you talking about?
I'm trying to get the other care data address right quick and care address. He testing the young crew. Somebody he finna send a bit.
For real?
Somebody he gonna send a bit somewhere late where the spot at.
Okay.
Yeah.
He told LJ you got liquor last.
20 seconds. And my notes might be wrong, but I don't think they are. Yeah, 20 seconds. Could you tell me when you hear anything about the scene?
Okay, go
Oh,
ahead.
for real?
Yeah, the YP Ray nigga.
Oh, I ain't even know that.
Yeah, that little PLK nigga.
Oh, yeah, I had a J5 with me last night. That's probably what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that who changed it.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yep, okay, I'm sorry. You're going by the different number. It's 201. Right, it's the PD, call 350. All right, here we go. This is the one I meant to pull up for you, Investigator Viverito.
Yo.
All right, man, we got all kinds of shit going on. I just jump in the other car, bro. Y'all niggas don't be getting dropped off and they ain't got no motherfucking ride to go back home to. That don't make sense.
Yeah.
The fuck you getting dropped off for? Nigga, ride with the nigga who brought you.
Yeah.
That's stupid as fuck. So, you need to be on the gun here, so. What's on with
We right here down here.
y'all? What?
Ride past trying to see.
Okay, stop. Did you not just hear him say riding past through the city?
He said riding past trying to see.
Well, where's the scene?
I said,
You said scene before, now you're saying trying to see, and I'm saying city.
you may have misunderstood what I was saying. Or you got to understand when these calls come in, when you click on the call, it will also provide a map of where they are, and the next call may show where they traveled to after that. It's my understanding that he traveled back towards that area.
Okay, but towards the area, you mean the city? It's in the city,
They never
right?
left the city.
Okay. Investigator Viverito, you previously testified that he said going to the scene, and now you're saying to this jury that he didn't say scene, he said see. Is that correct?
I don't know if I said he said, I don't believe I said he said he's riding through the scene. He may have rode back. I believe he was traveling back towards the scene.
And I know you're an expert, but if the jury listens to this and hears city, is that okay with you?
But that's not what's said, so I would clarify for them.
I understand that you want to tell everyone what's said here, but you've already given two different stories. You said scene, and then you said see.
Argumentative. Overruled.
It's
Can we just go by what we hear?
he.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, call 416, and I don't need this published. Thank y'all. It's from the early morning hours of March 16th, 2022. Okay. There was actually 2 calls that were played. Do you recall?
Correct?
Okay, one is Mr. Garlington and someone that you say is my client, and the person's whispering. I'm not even going to dispute it. Okay.
Okay.
We'll just say it's my client.
Okay,
Whispering about hiding in the crawl space.
correct?
Okay. And then the second call is Mr. Garlington and my client talking about what just happened.
Correct?
And of course, what just happened was the house was shot up, and then a bunch of police officers showed up, and no one was arrested.
Correct?
Right. Okay. So, and that was the same day, of course, that you spoke to Shannon Stillwell. You put him in the back of the police car, or someone put him in the back of the police car, and you spoke to him, and he told you he was, in fact, driving the white Audi.
Correct?
All right. So, that call, let's just review some things that were discussed by Mr. Garlington and Mr. Stillwell. They talked about their amazement about not being hit by any of the bullets that were fired into 2830 Waters Road, correct?
Correct?
They talked about their amazement that the police let them go from that location.
Correct?
They talked about how they hid from the police.
Correct?
Mr. Stillwell talked about being placed in the police car.
Correct?
Mr. Stillwell said that he denied knowing McMain when asked and said he was from Thomasville.
Correct?
Okay. That was misleading, right?
Correct?
Because he does, in fact, know McMain.
He does?
All right. And McMain, just so we're clear, is Christian McMillan.
He is?
Yeah. And he talks about getting out of there as soon as possible. Like speeding away because he couldn't believe that y'all, the police, let him go.
He does, but he says prior to leaving, he collected his FN and his rifle or stick and he left.
I'm going to get there. Okay. And they talked about seeing you too, right?
They did?
All right. So let's talk about, I know he, in that call, and clearly I'm getting there, he talked about sneaking his FN away from the scene, right?
Correct?
And about sneaking his stick out of one of the cars. I think the gray car.
Correct?
All right. Okay. Now, the FN, you've testified, you know that an FN 57 is registered in Miss Taisha Alexander's name, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that gun was located at Meadowlark Drive on March 17, 2022.
Correct?
Correct? The next day after this call.
Correct?
All right. Does that FN shoot .40 caliber bullets?
Does not?
That could not have been the murder weapon for Shamel Drinks.
No?
Could it? Okay. He talks about taking a stick from a car on the scene, right?
Correct?
And you know the stick to be an AK-47 type assault rifle, correct?
Could be an AK-47. It could be an AR-15. It could be, it's a rifle.
Typically shoot 7.62 caliber bullets.
Correct?
Okay, not 40 caliber.
Nope.
Okay, so you would know that that stick that he talks about taking from the scene once you guys let him go is, in fact, not the weapon used to shoot Mr. Drinks.
Correct?
All right. And in this call, where, again, you don't have any reason to believe Mr. Stillwell knew he was being recorded,
Correct?
or Mr. Garlington knew he was being recorded. In this call, he never talks about taking any other guns from the scene.
Correct?
Okay. Okay. Call 2119 is another call that was played. It's from April 1st, 2022 at 12:29 a.m. It was a call between Deamonte Garlington, who's on the wiretap, and Shannon Stillwell, who's in jail at this point, correct?
Correct?
Okay. And Deamonte is on his normal phone, and you testified that Shannon Stillwell, when you're in the jail, you said there's wall phones, right?
Correct?
Okay, and that's, the jury's heard those recordings where they talk about Securus and this phone will be recorded, and they are in fact recorded.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Stillwell was not on a recorded line.
Correct.
He was on a cell phone from the jail.
Correct.
Okay, so he, in common sense, he doesn't know that Deamonte Garlington is being wiretapped.
Correct.
Okay, and he has no reason to believe that the cell phone he's using from the jail is being recorded.
Correct.
It's fair to say that they believe that they're having a private communication that is not being recorded.
Correct.
All right. Mr. Atkins, could you do me a favor? This call 2119, and I'm talking about at 12:29 a.m. Could you play on April 1st, 12:29 a.m.? I'm just adding. Okay, yes. You know how to man consult with the.
Yes.
We're just going to cue that call up, okay? And I'm going to ask you some questions about it.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. And if you could cue it up to 2 minutes and 40 seconds. $240.
I was telling folks, I'm like, shit, what the hell they locked up for? Like, they just saying about the camera. I'm like, bro, they good. I'm just like, they gonna assume some shit like that anyway. They gonna assume that, like, oh, like, y'all ain't did nothing, feel me? So,
That's what I keep telling goddamn Lil. I keep telling him like, just chill. Like I know,
yeah, cause they
this
saying
ain't
he panicked.
nothing. Yeah, I'm like, this ain't nothing, bro. Like they just doing that cut. They seen as a goddamn gas station. Like just chill. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. That's what I'm telling. I keep telling him all the time. Shit, I'm like, listen, bro. Just like you, like, bro. I'm telling probably in the cat. Listen, bro. No, just tell him before you want to talk, bro. Like,
Not one word.
yeah,
Go down or what they try to portray or what they say, man. Don't say shit.
hell yeah. I ain't know that though, but so I didn't. I need to
And you can keep that up because I'm going to ask you to play another part. But thank you, Mr. Atkins. So on that call, again, neither party has reason to believe they're being recorded. That's Deamonte Garlington and Shannon Stillwell.
Correct.
And they talk about they gonna assume shit.
Correct.
Mr. Garlington says y'all didn't do nothing.
Correct.
And then Mr. Stillwell says they just saying it because they seen us at the gas station.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Atkins, if you could please play 11:20 at 11:28.
Yeah, man. What the hell twin man on? You still in the yo.
Yeah. I
I'm
said,
talking
what
about,
is that?
you know what I'm talking
LC?
about? Who?
Who?
Yo folk.
Yeah. I
Mr.
said, what is that today?
We're gonna come back to that one because I want to get the timing right.
Okay.
What's that?
Okay.
Okay, and that is okay. And we're gonna come back to that call. But let's talk about Mr. Stillwell's phone that was collected.
Sure.
Okay. Do you know you're able to view? So you collect the phones. Detective Leon Packer, he dumps the phones, and then you're able to view the phones, what the contents of the phones through a program called, what's it called? XRZ, is that correct?
XRY.
XRY. Okay. And you get just a whole bunch of information that's in whoever's phone. Pictures.
The contents of the phone are organized by category.
Right, and we're talking about pictures, text, emails, instant message, call logs, location, data, internet searches,
Correct.
notes.
Correct.
Okay. And if you don't know, that's fine, but do you know how many texts or calls total were in this phone?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it would be listed on the extraction, on the front page of the extraction. When you open it up digitally, it'll give you what you're going to see initially is it's everything by category. So it'll say 20,000 texts, 100 calls, things of that nature.
Okay. Ms. Knight, if you would please display 227 VVA2. Oh, Ms. Knight, yes, VVA2. Yes, VVA2. 227 VVA2. A. Okay, this is one of the text messages or one of the text conversations that was introduced on Friday, I believe. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this is from Mr. Stillwell's phone.
Correct.
All right. And in his phone, Mr. Stillwell's talking to, is that D? Do you know that number to be Deamonte Garlington?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Because there's a couple of D's in this case, but you believe this to be Deamonte Garlington?
He did change his number right before the wiretap, so I believe that's the number before.
Okay. And if you could zoom out a little bit, Ms. Hilton. Oh, Mr. Atkins, so we can see the whole conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. So in this conversation, to add context, Mr. Stillwell is indicating that one of his two phones is at Big House.
Correct.
Okay. Do you take that to be Darius Ford's house? And again, let's be clear, this conversation occurred December 24th, 2021.
Okay.
Okay, so we're talking about 3.5 months before any of this involving Christian McMiller's death or Darius Ford's death or Shamel Drink's death occurs.
Correct.
Okay. Do you take that to be Big's phone? Is there another Big? Do you not know?
There is another Big.
Okay. So, but in any event, Mr. Stillwell is saying he left his phone at someone else's house.
Correct.
Okay. And then D says, finna take it in where you at, indicating that he's taking Mr. Stillwell's phone, right?
I don't take that as taking the phone, like finna take it in, like I'm finna go to sleep or go home.
Fair enough.
Like take it in for the night.
Fair enough. Could you go down, Mr. Atkins? Okay, and this is the part that the state introduced. Okay. He says, if Polka asks, tell her I'm op hunting. Okay, he did not say I'm op hunting.
Correct.
He said, if Polka asks, tell her I'm out hunting.
Correct.
Okay, and Polka you know to be who?
Taisha Alexander.
And that is Mr. Stillwell's girlfriend at the time.
I guess, yes, I don't. Yes, at
Something
the time.
like- something like
Sometimes, yes.
And you also know from your review of the calls that Mr. Stillwell was having some issues with fidelity.
Yes.
Okay. So he's just saying, if Polka asks, tell her I'm op hunting.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Mr. Atkins, can we go back to that call? I think I finally got my stuff together here. Okay. Remember that call that we were just talking about with, and just to review, it's Garlington and Mr. Stillwell, and they were talking about people were going to assume things, and they're just saying it because they saw us at the gas station.
Correct.
Okay. I want to play, Mr. Atkins, if you could start playing it. I guess we could start at 11:28. Yeah, 11:45. Yeah, that's fine.
Yo, folk.
Yeah. I was there with him yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got out of town, man. So he finna get ready to come back. I was just gonna lie with his ass.
Yeah. You ain't talked all night. That whole night crazy, bro.
Yeah, I just talked to her today. I talked to her today.
Man, that be
I
crazy.
was telling her, I'm like, he on the cell phone, like, he probably be over there, like, what not? She's like, what? You ain't think you gonna tell on me? I'm like, man, hell nah.
Shit crazy. I don't even be texting that back no more.
I should be testing on like on the tablet and shit.
Yeah, I don't even be responding to that crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm finna get bro back his phone, right? I'm gonna get up with you though.
I do that, man. I
All
got
right,
you.
love you. All right,
I love you too.
all right.
All right. Well, okay. Let me just ask you this, and we're going to get it together, and we're going to get it played. Do you remember on that call, that same call, that unrecorded call? I mean, that these two gentlemen thought that they were talking to themselves without being recorded. Do you remember Mr. Stillwell saying, when they test for gunpowder, it's going to come back clean?
I do.
Okay, and that's on this call.
Correct.
All right. And he does not say the car has been cleaned.
Correct.
He's saying, don't worry about it because when they test for gunpowder, it's going to come back clean.
Correct.
Okay. And that was on the private call between Mr. Stillwell and Mr. Garlington that they had no reason to believe was being recorded.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the phone. You made note of 227 VVB11, and we don't need to display it, but it was basically something in Mr. Stillwell's notes that said, "Pop my shit. I really got options. Poor little ops. They be dropping."
Correct.
Okay, and that was in March 15th, 2022 at 12:52 a.m. The phone says that that's when it was entered.
It might say either modified or entered, yes.
Okay, and that was, and we're going to get to it, but you're aware that Mr. Stillwell's grandmother, Betty Jackson, texted him about the shooting, about seeing it on the news that night?
Objection, assuming facts not.
Well, it's going to be in evidence. I'm asking if she's aware.
Overruled.
You're aware of that?
I was aware that Miss Alexander notified him about a shooting in Mechanicsville. I don't know if Miss Jackson did.
Okay. It was hours, this would have been hours after Miss Alexander alerted him as well, correct?
Okay.
Correct?
I'd have to see it. I'm not.
Okay. All right, well, we'll get to it. But this was at 12:52 a.m.,
Okay.
right?
I haven't seen it, so I just.
Okay, and we've already discussed ops,
Correct.
dropping ops. Those are common themes, common topics of drill music, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And at the time, your investigation, at the time that he entered this note into his phone, he was in fact at the studio, correct? At 12:52 a.m. on March 15th.
After leaving the gas station, they went to a studio. I did not have location data on Mr. Stillwell to say, but I believe they should have still been at the studio.
Still been at the studio creating music when he entered that note.
Creating music, hanging out. Like, yeah, that's what they do. Hang out at the
Okay.
studio.
All right, cool. And then you talked about search words, a search that you noted about a Windsor Street shooting, right? That was in Mr. Stillwell's phone.
So he didn't, and I clarified that on direct. He
Right.
didn't search Windsor Street. He searched Fox 5
Okay.
and then
Well-
clicked on, and then within Fox 5, then searched the Fox 5 website.
I appreciate that. So on 3/17 at 2 in the morning, Mr. Stillwell clicked on the Fox 5 website to this article.
Correct.
Okay, didn't search, your testimony is he didn't search words like Windsor Street or anything, but he clicked on the article and that's what shows up in the phone.
I'd have to see the screen. I believe he searched Fox 5, traveled to the Fox, like say I open my phone and I want to go to whatever web, Amazon. I search Amazon, click on Amazon, and then on Amazon, I would then search. That's what happened. So he searched for Fox 5, went to Fox 5. Then went on Fox 5, I believe searched Windsor Street shooting and then clicked on the article is what it looks like.
Okay, and Miss Knight, could you just display 227 VV88 so everyone knows what we're talking about? Okay, so this is what you're talking about, right? The search.
Correct.
Okay, and that's and this is 3:17 at 2:31 and 56 seconds in the morning, correct?
Correct.
No, that's I want to show you some documents, investigator.
Sure.
That's okay with you. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Investigator Viverito, I am approaching you with what's been marked 57A, DS57A, DS57C, and DS58. Could you look at these and tell me if you recognize?
Sure. Okay, these are excerpts from Mr. Jackson's phone.
Right, and those are, well, and are those excerpts from, are those conversations from the data that was downloaded from Mr. Jackson's phone?
Sure, the first one is the one that I spoke about that I had seen of Miss Alexander informing him about the shooting.
It's not in the,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Are those accurate representations of the data that was in Mr. Stillwell's phone?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, at this point, I would move to admit 57, DS57A, DS57C, and DS58 into evidence.
A, C, and E. Say that again, please, if you don't mind.
It's, and there is no DS57B. It's DS57A, DS57C, and DS58.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Don't know where the E came from. Okay. Those are admitted.
Mr. Kokomo, could you please, or permission to publish, Your
You
Honor?
may.
Mr. Kokomo, could you please publish 57A first? So in this, in DS57A, investigator, this is a conversation between Taisha Alexander, also known as Polka, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Stillwell.
Correct.
Okay. At 3:14:22, at 11:01 p.m., Miss Alexander reaches out to, or texts Mr. Stillwell and says, "You okay? Somebody just got killed in the Ville. Ugh." Or ugh. Atlanta, too much right now, right?
Correct.
All right. And then they respond to each other with kisses. Mr. Stillwell asks who got killed, correct?
Correct.
And then Miss Alexander eventually says, "I don't know yet." But before that, she sends some sort of screen message, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that's at this, the message is sent at 11:19:47 p.m., correct?
Correct.
All right. And Mr. Kokomo, if you could publish 57C. And this is the screenshot that, or the picture that Miss Alexander sent to Mr. Stillwell at 11:19 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And it's a photo, and is that Windsor Street?
I believe so.
And it's captioned, "Somebody just got killed in Mechanicsville."
Correct.
And it's posted by someone named Bori Billions.
Correct.
And whenever Miss Alexander sent this picture or downloaded it, it already had 2,000 views, correct?
Correct.
All right. So by that night, just based on what we see in this phone, by that night at 11 o'clock or 11:15 or 19, the word had spread about a shooting, correct?
Correct.
In Mechanicsville,
Correct.
where someone was killed.
Correct.
Okay. And this was not a secret. It was being spread throughout social media.
Correct.
Mr. Kokomo, if you could post DS58. This is a conversation, and I'm sorry, it's marked 58A, so Your Honor, if we could just amend that to make 58A.
Sure.
Thank you. So looking at DS58A, this is a conversation between Mr. Stillwell and Boss Lady, correct?
Correct.
And you know Boss Lady to be Betty Jackson, correct?
Correct.
His grandma.
Correct.
His grandmother who raised him.
Correct.
At 11, Mr. Kokomo, thank you. At 11:19 p.m., Shannon texts his grandmother, "I love you."
Correct.
Boss Lady or Betty Jackson responds, "Mama love you so much, heart, heart, kiss, 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 'cause you're my sweet thing."
Correct.
And Mr. Stillwell says, "Yeah." I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but yeah, right?
Sure.
And then Miss Jackson gives a thumbs up, right? And then at 11:26:57, Miss Jackson says to Mr. Stillwell, or texts Mr. Stillwell, "Hope you are not near Windsor Street shooting on the news," right?
Right.
And then she says, "Answer me, please."
Correct.
And eventually at 11:41, 15 minutes later, Mr. Stillwell responds, "I'm at the studio, Mom."
Correct.
Okay. So at 11:26, according to this conversation, not only did Miss Alexander alert Mr. Stillwell about the shooting on Windsor Street, but Miss Jackson says there's a shooting on Windsor Street, right?
Correct.
And it's on the news.
Correct.
Was this information about the shooting on the news at that point?
I know that the article that Miss Alexander had, that's a female, I don't know her real name, in Atlanta, that wasn't like a ATL scoop or a news thing. And then I don't know how Miss Jackson saw it, so I'm not sure if she got word of mouth from Miss Alexander, worried about it. I don't
Maybe
know.
she saw it on the news. Maybe
I don't know when the news coverage began.
Okay. The bottom line is by 11:26 that night, two different people had informed Mr. Stillwell about a shooting, a death, Windsor Street,
Correct.
and the word had spread throughout. It wasn't just Mr. Stillwell that was being informed. The word had spread throughout the Atlanta community that quickly.
Correct.
All right. And basically, the phone indicates on March 17th, 2 days later, Mr. Stillwell clicked on a news article about that shooting.
We sought out the news article and then clicked on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
He sought out and clicked on it.
Correct.
All right, cool. All right. Right when you started testifying, you remember when you were going through a timeline, and I think it was from 2019 to 2020, different events that had occurred?
I do.
And we heard a lot of names, Tanquarius Mender, right?
Correct.
And you said he's a member of the Rolling Crips.
As well as ySL, yes.
Okay, and we heard about Stephen Harris,
Correct.
and he's a Crip. And we heard about,
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephen Harris is a member of ySL.
okay, he's a member of YSL. We heard about Marcus Sims.
Correct.
He's a Crip.
Yes.
Okay, we heard about Wayne Alford. And we heard about a bunch of other names in this
Correct.
timeline that you were going through. Well, first of all, let me just ask you this. When you were asked about all these events, you were referring to some sort of, you were refreshing your recollection with a sheet that was in front of you.
Correct.
Okay, that was highlighted, color-coded.
Correct.
Okay, did you create that sheet?
Mr. Abadi had created the sheet as a timeline.
Okay, so when you were testifying about those events, you were refreshing your recollection. You were being asked questions by the prosecutors, correct?
Correct.
And then you didn't have any reports of your own with you, did you, about any of these events?
No, I didn't. I was at the GBI at that time, and they were APD cases, so they wouldn't be my reports.
So you didn't investigate any of these events?
So the way it would work is gangs typically doesn't take an aggravated assault or a homicide or things of that nature. We will work with those units and provide them information and assist with their investigations. So the reports, I will help with the cases, but they would fall with those investigators.
Did you have any reports with you when you were of your reports with you when you were discussing those?
No.
Okay. But you were refreshing your recollection off of a sheet of paper that was prepared by the prosecutor.
Well, this is something we had discussed. There's numerous incidents, so we needed a timeline to keep them correct.
All right, well, let me just ask you this. In all those things, 2019, 2020, that you discussed, all those events, Shannon Stillwell wasn't charged with any of those events, was he?
He was not.
Okay, cool. You remember when you talked about how I was asking you about your reports and you said you write them in search warrant applications?
Correct.
All right, I want to talk to you about that. You did a search warrant application for the house of Jeffrey Williams on 355 Allison Drive, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to ask you some questions about that affidavit. Would having your affidavit that you wrote
Sure.
up there with you, would that be helpful?
Sure.
May I approach?
You may.
Okay. These affidavits that you fill out to take to a judge to try to get a search warrant, they're under oath?
Yes.
Okay. A judge relies on them, relies on the accuracy of them, correct?
Correct.
Relies on them to be complete.
Correct.
The intent of an affidavit is not to mislead a judge, is it?
No,
Okay. And you wouldn't mislead a judge, would you?
I would not.
Okay. And you filled out this affidavit on May 9th, 2022, correct?
Following the presentation to the grand jury, yes.
Right. May 9th, 2022?
Correct.
And that was also in the wake of these various attacks on Lucci, on Rashawn Bennett in the jail.
Correct.
Okay. In fact, you were interested. You had that one with Jaden Myrick. Oh, excuse me, with Mr. Eppinger and Mr. Sumlin, and Mr. Eppinger was trying to get Mr. Sumlin to talk to someone to get payment, right? And you suspected that person to be Jeffrey Williams.
Suspected, and that was confirmed by Mr. Sumlin.
Okay, so you suspected that to be Jeffrey Williams.
Right, and was confirmed by Mr. Sumlin, yes.
Okay, again.
Yes, I
please,
suspected,
just
yes.
questions I ask, okay? So you saw a search warrant for Jeffrey Williams' home for evidence on these matters, correct?
No,
Okay. You saw the search warrant for Jeffrey Williams' home.
for his body, for his cellular devices, and for gang evidence.
Okay. Okay. So, in Mr. Williams' home.
Correct.
In your affidavit is what's used to develop PC, or probable cause, for the judge to rely on, right?
Correct.
And in your affidavit, I think it's in the 4th page, you reference a post that you saw on the internet about Jeffrey Williams posting YFN, and this is already in evidence, YFN, if ain't like what you do for your mother and kids, I would have been killed you, right?
Correct.
That's referenced in your affidavit.
Which page is not on 4?
Well, mine's not numbered, but I'm just gonna go by. Right, it's on the 5th page, I'm sorry. If we count, and again, they're not numbered, but I'm just going by the 5th page that I have.
So,
And it would be the first, it would have been the 2nd full paragraph. So there's 1 sentence and then 2 paragraphs down.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You can look at may I approach?
Yes. Okay, that's different than what I have.
You reference seeing on XXL, this magazine, you reference seeing this post that Mr. Williams supposedly made, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that made your affidavit because you thought that was important to show Mr. Williams and his veiled threats to Mr. Bennett, correct?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Can I have that back? I'm just going to need it.
Sure.
I'll bring it back to you. Now, you also, 2 pages after that, whatever page you have it, I have in the beginning, it says details 4.
I'm gonna have to see the page because these pages are whatever I have is not the same as yours.
You can have
Okay, no, I see that one. Okay, I gotcha.
it. All right. Also in your affidavit, you include a text thread between Mr. Wooney Lee and Mr. Williams, correct?
Correct.
And as part of this text thread, you draw the judge's attention to a specific line, correct?
I included that amongst other things in the affidavit, yes?
Well, there's one particular line that you put in a bigger font, and you also circled it, or it's circled, correct?
It's circled, yes.
Okay. And you circled it to draw attention to it, correct?
To what I was referring to, yes.
Yes. And the line that you circled to draw attention to was YSL rule the world, kid. 24M on an N head, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you wanted to highlight that passage said by Mr. Williams in the text thread, correct?
Correct.
You wanted to highlight that for the judge.
Amongst other posts, yes.
Okay. What was he referring to? Why did you feel it important to highlight 24M on an N's head to the judge?
Well, he's referring to YSL ruling the world
Yeah.
as an organization, and it could be a play on words or a play on things that have happened, saying 24M on a racial expletive head.
Okay, 24M on a racial expletive head. It sounds like Mr. Williams had money on someone's head.
It could be taken that way, yes.
It could be taken that way, and you highlighted it and circled it for the judge, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you believe that too. You wouldn't have misled the judge about what was being discussed, would you? You believe that to be a threat, didn't you?
I didn't say it was a threat. It's saying that
Well-
he's willing to, that's how they talk. They'll talk about, they have the ability to put money on people's heads.
Okay. Mr. Kokomo, could you please publish Jeffrey Williams 3 and 4? Is that correct? Okay. Could you please publish Jeffrey Williams 3? Oh, before you do that, in this thread that you highlighted in your affidavit to the judge, this thread between Wooney Lee and Mr. Williams took place on February 7th, 2021?
Correct.
You just started over, Mr. Kokomo, with volume. All right.
They can put 24M on the front of their head. Y'all young hoes get in line. Slime rule the world. Believe it. Y'all niggas out this motherfucker spending 24 million on their heads. They can put 24M on the front of their head. Y'all young hoes get in line.
Okay. And could you please publish Jeffrey Williams 3A? You see, what's displayed is Jeffrey Williams 3A.
I do.
Okay, and it's a reaction, Jeffrey Williams reacting after Lil Uzi Vert put a $24 million diamond into his head.
Correct.
Okay. Did you know about Lil Uzi Vert and the $24 million diamond and that reference when you filled out this affidavit?
I did not, but I would still stand by what I put in the affidavit.
Okay, so you're telling me right now, on a sworn statement to a judge with knowledge that Lil Uzi Vert just got a $24 million diamond put into his head the days before Mr. Williams typed that, you would still put that quote, YSL ruled the world, 24 million on an N head in that affidavit?
Objection. Vague, compounded, maybe mischaracterization of what the witness just said.
Overruled.
I did not have knowledge of Lil Uzi Vert getting a diamond in his head.
Okay, so all right, so let me ask that last question again. Instead of saying I would do it again, if you had knowledge that Lil Uzi Vert just got $24 million diamond in his head and that Mr. Williams was referring to that, would you still have put that in the affidavit?
Yes,
To mislead the judge?
not misleading. May I explain?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm saying is this social media direct message is different than what you see on here. Lil Uzi Vert, I don't remember, is a member of YSL. So I think it might be a new, like a term they're going to coin, like wipe his nose, things of that nature. So 24 on somebody's head might be a new thing that they're going to go with. He's saying YSL rules the world. As the leader, he can make that assertion.
You're doing a lot of explaining. Did you do any of that explaining in your sworn affidavit to the judge?
The sworn affidavit reads, Jeffrey Williams brags that YSL rules the world and has $24 million.
Okay. And clearly, when you put highlighted and circled 24M on a N's head, you're sending a message to that judge, are you not? Let's be real.
I'm referring to my words that I wrote say, Jeffrey Williams brags that YSL rules the world and has $24 million.
All right, and just so we're clear, as we sit here today, as someone, a law enforcement officer, even with knowledge of this, you would still put that in front of the judge.
There are different interpretations to everything as we've seen throughout this whole trial.
I agree. Can we make our determinations, or are you going to make the determinations for us?
Objection, arguments is sustained.
Do you think maybe you misinterpreted what was said by Mr. Williams? Is that a possibility?
I think it differs from what was presented on the internet and between direct messages, as we've seen.
So your answer is no, your interpretation is perfect, pristine.
My interpretation was YSL rules the world and they have $24 million. That's what I wrote in my words in the affidavit. I didn't say Mr. Williams has $24 million on YFN Lucci's head. I didn't say that. I said YSL rules. He claims that YSL rules the world and has $24 million.
No, you didn't say it. You just put in a bigger font and circled it for the judge, right? Right?
It wasn't a bigger font. That's how the message reads. It's the same font as the date and time, the same size as the date and time as the name, the Instagram handle.
In the circle?
It's circled, correct.
Let's talk about you, Miss Knight. Could you pull up 227 VV A6B? Thank you, Miss Knight. Yesterday, you indicated that, now this is from a video.
Correct.
With Mr. Nichols.
Correct.
Rolling a blunt.
Correct.
Okay. And then there's other individuals there, correct? There's other individuals in the room?
Correct.
Okay. And then it's on Mr. Stillwell's phone, so you're presuming that Mr. Stillwell was filming the video?
It was filmed from his device. So
Right,
yes.
right. Okay. So yesterday, you made a claim that a gun, well, what did you say? A gun is, I don't want to jumble your words. What are you claiming about the guns on this table?
A gun is what?
You identified or thought a gun was consistent with something?
It could be consistent with a Glock 27.
Could be consistent.
Correct.
Okay. And which gun is this?
The one towards the back right here.
Okay. could be consistent with a Glock 27. All right. It could also, well, first of all, are you a firearms expert?
I'm not.
Okay, you're just someone who's owned a Glock before.
Several, yes.
Okay. And before yesterday, had you ever made the claim that, oh, I reviewed this video and this appears to be a Glock 27?
That was my first time testifying yesterday, so where else would I make?
What about reports? Did you ever write a report and said, I reviewed this is very important. I reviewed this video that was in Mr. Stillwell's phone, and I believe that that could be consistent with a Glock 27.
Well, while reviewing the evidence in preparation for trial, when I took a better look at this video and found it, it was probably 2 or 3 days before I testified. And that's when I first had to really research through and look at photos and kind of isolate what kind of gun that was.
So so the answer is no, you didn't write a report.
No.
Okay. And certainly the first time saying it to me or anyone on this side was yesterday in court.
Correct.
Okay. You say it looks like it could be consistent, or it could be consistent with a Glock 27 based on the shape of the bottom of the grip. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. It could also be consistent with a Springfield firearm, correct?
I'm not familiar with a Springfield, but from how the magazine looks, also it could be consistent with a Glock.
Okay. It could also be consistent with a Sig Sauer. Could also be consistent with a Smith & Wesson, correct?
I'm familiar with a Glock.
Right, because you're not a firearms expert.
I
You're
never-
only familiar with these Glocks.
I never
And-
claimed to be Mr. Schardt.
Okay, well, you start identifying guns in court, kind of making yourself an expert, but you're not an expert, are you?
I'm not.
Okay, and you don't even know, whatever this gun is, if Mr. Stillwell left with that gun or didn't leave with that gun. You don't know if anyone left with that gun. You don't know whose gun that is.
Correct, but we don't know that they didn't.
Okay. Right. Let me ask you this about your Glock 27 that you say this looks consistent with. When you shoot your Glock 27, does it expel shell casings?
I don't own a Glock 27. When I was purchasing a subcompact Glock, I was going back and forth between the 27 and the 43. I prefer to shoot a 9mm, so I went with the 43.
So you don't even own a Glock 27?
I just said when I was researching the two, handling the two at the gun dealer.
So now you don't own a Glock 27. You were researching it, which means you were handling the gun at the gun dealer. That's your experience with the Glock 27.
I never asserted that I owned one. I've seen one. I've handled one. I can recognize one.
So you've handled one at a gun dealer, and that's what you're basing the identification on.
I've recovered a good bit of guns in my
Okay.
career. I know what they look like.
All right, let me ask you this. Since you know about guns, at least through your career, Glock 27s, when you shoot them, do they expel shell casings?
Yes.
Okay, Glock 27s, when you shoot them, do they make a loud bang?
Yes.
When you shoot a Glock 27, does it create a muzzle flash?
I should. I mean, when you
Okay.
shoot it, like during the day, you wouldn't see it, or sometimes at night you can see it, but
Okay, and when you shoot a Glock 27, does it emit gunshot residue?
if it's inside of a contained area, yes, it would.
Okay. All right. Remember on Friday, you talked about you get to the end of an investigation, something seemed small is huge. And we were
Correct.
talking about the post. All right. Well, there's one thing, surveillance video. You would agree that that starts huge and remains huge? Like
Every-
surveillance video is a pretty important part of a case.
Every investigation is different, but yes,
Okay. You've seen the BP video, correct?
I have.
And you've seen it, Detective Hogan showed it to you?
He did for the purpose of identifying the individuals, yes.
Right, okay. Have you seen the FedEx surveillance video?
I have.
Okay. I'd like to watch it with you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Mr. Kokomo, if you could keep it up. Okay, before you start, Mr. Kokomo, investigator, when did you first see the FedEx video?
It was after I met with Investigator Hogan in the afternoon of the 16th, so it would have been after that.
Okay. Well, are you aware that, and maybe this will help you answer this question, you're aware that Detective Hogan swore out warrants against my client without ever viewing the FedEx video?
I can't speak to what he did or did not do.
Okay. When did you most recently watch the FedEx video?
Probably maybe like a week ago,
Okay. How many times in total have you watched the FedEx video?
a few times.
A few times. When you say a few times, how many is that?
And I've watched it a year ago, or a couple years, like 2 years ago. I watched it.
Mr. Kokomo, if you could please publish the FedEx. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Kokomo. Okay, Mr. Kokomo, if you could pause that video right now. Thank you. Investigator Viverito. At this point in video, as we have it paused, you would agree that Mr. Drinks' red Versa is on the left, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You would agree that Mr. Stillwell's rented white Audi with tinted windows
Correct.
is in the middle. And you would agree that Mr. Nichols, actually Miss Lewis, Mr. Nichols' wife, that Ford Fusion is on the right, correct?
Either the right or staggered behind it, yes.
Okay. And according to your investigation, Mr. Drinks is alone in the car.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Stillwell is in the car with Mr. Garlington per your investigation.
Correct.
And Mr. In the car, the Ford Fusion, we have Mr. Nichols driving,
Correct.
Mr. Boyer,
Correct.
and Mr. Farley.
Correct.
And your theory is that while at this light, Mr. Stillwell shot Mr. Drinks, correct?
I'm not the homicide investigator, so I'm going along with the evidence that was presented to me by homicide. But yes, that's consistent with what Detective Hogan, his case.
Well, you know, he swore out a warrant for Shannon Stillwell for actually shooting Mr. Drinks.
That's consistent with what Detective Hogan had found.
Okay. In this video, you could see headlights, correct?
Correct.
You could see traffic lights,
You can see tail lights and traffic lights, yes.
and you could see brake lights, correct?
Correct.
All right, awesome. Mr. Kokomo, could you just play the video? And I'm just going to ask you to look at the cars closely.
Mm-hmm.
pause, Mr. Kokomo, please. All right, so we're paused at 102:36 on this video. At this point, Mr. Stillwell in the white Audi is pulled off, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and Mr. Nichols and with Mr. Boyer and Mr. Farley have pulled off.
Correct.
Okay, while they were there at that light with Mr. Drinks, did you observe any muzzle flash on that video?
No, and with this quality of video, I would not expect to see it.
Okay, right. You just see brake lights and traffic lights and headlights, but no muzzle flash. Okay, I got you.
A muzzle flash is much, much, much dimmer than a brake light. Like if you're shooting at night, you're hard pressed to see your own muzzle flash.
Firearms expert again.
I'm telling you, my experience from shooting a fire, and we do take night firing courses.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Gunshot residue. You aware that the headliner from Mr. Stillwell's car, the Audi, was collected and tested for gunshot residue?
I am.
You ever talked to Alexander GBI analyst Alexander Coven about the results that he found?
I have not.
And you are aware that warrants were taken out certainly before any of those GSR results were in, correct?
Correct.
Talk about tint. You've been preparing with the state. You know that the state has said that Mr. Stillwell had tint applied to his windows of that white Audi upon renting it, correct?
Correct.
In violation of the rental agreement, I may add.
Correct.
Okay. And this tint was applied on Flat Shoals Road, according to the district attorneys, at about 6:30 p.m.
According to them, yes.
Okay. You were able to observe the white Audi on March 16th?
I did not walk. Wasn't that interested in it at that point, so I did not walk. It was very, very dark.
Have you seen the pictures that Miss Antoinette Green took of the white Audi after it was recovered when Mr. Stillwell was arrested?
I have.
Did you see any damage to the tint, specifically the front driver passenger tint on that car?
I did not.
Mr. Kokomo, if you could rewind again. No, actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Keep it here. Keep it here. Just play it. I'm sorry, Mr. Kokomo. Okay. You saw that car speed up behind Mr. Stillwell? Pause it, please. You saw
Yes.
that? Mr. Stillwell, you're aware that he, well, you've already stated this, he was victimized in the past. Someone shot through the rear windows, killing Tiara Jones.
Yes.
And now that car that sped up is next to Mr. Drinks, correct? Or approaching Mr. Drinks.
It's approaching, but it stopped short of Mr. Drinks.
Okay, Mr. Kokomo, if you could please play it. Okay. So now there's a pause. So now there's one car next to Mr. Drinks, correct?
It's still not next to him. You could see from the angle that it looks like the front of the car. I'm sorry. The front of the car is like, from what I can see, looks like the front of the car. The front wheels are still towards the back of the vehicle. It's not like exact with the car.
Mr. Kokomo, if you could please play. See that car make a U-turn?
I do.
Okay. What car was next to Mr. Drinks when that car suddenly made a U-turn?
Judging by how the lights are, that car still appears to be back a little bit, but next to it.
All right, so now you're making three-dimensional evaluations, but we can't see a muzzle flash off this.
A muzzle.
AMV.
Mr. Schardt, I'm going to explain to you when and I don't know if you're mischaracterizing it. When you go to the range, example, to fire your weapons at night and there's a line of shooters, it's not bam, 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 lights everywhere. It's a very, very muted, if it shows. So this far away with this quality of video, I would not expect to see that.
Okay, well, let's talk about this car.
Sure.
This car makes a U-turn. Did you see, is there like a train that's crossing that would have let this person know, no, I need to find another route?
No.
Is there a officer saying, hey, turn around, you can't come this way?
No.
Is there an animal crossing the road that would have made this man do a U-turn?
No.
Who is this? Whose car is this that made a U-turn?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know if anyone ever tried to use these license plate readers to determine whose car that is so we could talk to them about why they made that sudden U-turn?
That would be part of Detective Hogan's investigation, but I do not.
Okay. Could on the shape of the bottom of the grip, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. It could also be consistent with Detective Hogan swore out warrants against my client without ever viewing the well. Did we? Do you?
Wasn't that interested in it at that point, so I did not walk. It was very, very dark.
Have you seen the pictures that Miss Antoinette Green took of the white Audi after it was recovered when Mr. Stillwell was arrested?
I have.
Did you see?
Hold on, y'all. I didn't mess something up. Well, I didn't mess any. Well, anyway, let me make sure the stream is good. Let me make sure I'm where I need to be, and I'm just gonna talk to you guys for a second while I try to, you know. Max is brilliant. I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of him. Like, this is just brilliant. He made her unbelievable or inconsistent or untrustworthy or whatever that word is. Unreliable, right? He gave her that title, then added some other things in there. To where we don't even really know if I mean we still need some evidence kinda, because this ain't it. Something that I can trust, something that I can believe. And so from my perspective, this is just my perspective. From my perspective, if they arrested these two or this one, Shannon Stillwell, on the warrant of him being the person responsible for Shamel Drink's situation, not to make light of that at all, I'm just trying to use my words carefully. So if that's, they wouldn't have never gotten to all of the other things. And whatever it is that they have done, they've already done all that they need to. Because I can't even say that it's really because of this RICO thing. Because how did we even get here? I don't know. It's a mess. And I'm just going to walk them on up out of there. Because I still need more. And I don't need any more of the post and the inference and the lingo meaning. Like, I don't need any more of that. I don't know what I need at this point. I don't want to say the J word, but I want to say the J word. Child. But it's serious all the way around, so I definitely don't want to make light of it. Let me see what happened with this, what's going on with this stream, y'all. I'll be right back.
Passenger tint on that.
Also-
Crazy.
Mr. Schardt, I'm going to explain to you when you're, and I don't know if you're mischaracterizing it. When you go to the range, example, to fire your weapons at night and there's a line of shooters, it's not bam, 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 lights everywhere. It's a very, very muted, if it shows. So this far away with this quality of video, I would not expect to see that.
Okay, well, let's talk about this car.
Sure.
This car makes a U-turn. Did you see, is there like a train that's crossing that would have let this person know, no, I need to find another route?
No,
Is there a officer saying, hey, turn around, you can't come this way?
no,
Is there an animal crossing the road that would have made this man do a U-turn?
no,
Who is this? Whose car is this that made the U-turn?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know if anyone ever tried to use these license plate readers to determine whose car that is, so we could talk to them about why they made that sudden U-turn?
That would be part of Detective Hogan's investigation, but I do not.
Okay. Could
All right, so I don't know what's going on. I'll come back later if there's anything going on. But this was good. This was good. Listen, and this wasn't even this was cross. Child, if closing gonna be like a finishing Mortal Kombat kind of situation. Closing, because he's killing Cross. Oh, girl in the hot seat. She in the hot seat. She ain't going down without a fight though. Like she knows some stuff. Shoot. Wow. Anyway, day 163, y'all. We almost in there. Almost done. I'll come back later if something else pops off. It's your girl Duchess, and I'm out.